were so many times over the last decade where there was this hysteria about what Donald Trump was doing. And much of it came from progressives who had lost touch with reality. You know, it was immediately, you know, immigration enforcement is Hitlerian, they would say. Or, you know, like saying that you believe Vladimir Putin didn't interfere in the 2016 elections and that you're not sure the intelligence agencies are right is treason. It's treason for the president to question his own intelligence agency. You know, hysteria after hysteria. Obviously, all the stuff about January 6th, the impeachments, all this kind of like ridiculous opposition to Donald Trump. But entering 2026, it almost seems like Donald Trump is working as hard as he can to convince everyone that he actually is an insane dictator. Like that he actually has completely, like that he's had a break from reality, and that like the 25th Amendment ought to be invoked or something like that. Donald Trump, listen, we're at I can't even keep track anymore, Rob. Are we at $39 trillion in debt, or are we just at $38.5 trillion in debt? And if it's not 39, it'll be 39 in a month. And then I think we'll hit 40 like a couple months after that, because that's how quickly we go through money now. So Donald Trump, in this situation, Donald Trump now, if you really think about it, everybody, this is one of the things that was interesting about beefing with Dan Bongino, is even though I was getting by far the best of those exchanges, there's a percentage of people who like still want to find a way to support Dan Bongino. And like I said to one of them the other day, I go, dude, if 1 year ago, you all would have been pretending to agree with me about Jeffrey Epstein and the deep state. And now you're all getting, like 1 year ago, they would have been bragging, no new wars. Donald Trump's the only one who's against the neocons. He's the only one who's going to keep us out of wars. And we're going to do America first things. And in the last week, Donald Trump has threatened the shit out of Iran, Venezuela, Colombia, Mexico, Greenland. Am I missing one? There might have been one more in there. Now, by the way, Donald Trump, as always becomes his eternal defense, you can always say, yeah, Donald Trump says lots of retarded shit and doesn't do any of it. But as I mentioned to you, Rob, and I'm not saying this is the only possible reason why, but then he officially requested a $1.5 trillion war budget for next year, dwarfing the budget that he asked for this year, which was the highest military budget in human history. And so you actually, at a certain point, start to look at this and go like, is he serious? Does he actually think we can do like all of these things at once? But it's like, you want to have the most reckless policy ever, and let's parlay that with 3 other reckless policies. And it's just to make the odds of success that much slimmer. But of course, the big one right now, well, Venezuela's a big one too, but at least the latest incoherent threats have been directed at Iran, where there are mass protests going on. And I just find, I want to focus a bit on that, because I just think like there's a lot that's very interesting that we can already kind of learn from what's just developed over the last few days. But I want to get your thoughts on any of this stuff before we do that, Rob. So what do you think?
Well, first and foremost, I agree with you that, you know, for all the time that we spent defending Trump and telling everyone you guys are a bunch of lunatics and he's not a dictator, the environment, I know we're going to get to Powell later in the show, it does feel like it's getting a little bit dicey, and that he's really trying to become more of the authoritarian that we defended that he was not. And it does seem like a dangerous environment. Per the recklessness of the Iran threats, I was just picking up on, I think we're going to play this clip, the Donald Trump saying that they called to negotiate. And I'm like, are they negotiating stepping down, or are we now going to be backing the Iranian regime against their own people, I guess, if they're willing to meet certain U.S. demands? I found that to be quite interesting. And obviously, I don't really understand what the game plan is going to be for Iran. So I guess maybe they're thinking it's their best moment because the people are actually revolting. So we can back the revolt and, you know, I guess install a new dictator there that will be better for them, and maybe flip that in 10, 20 years.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it seems, look, I don't know, I'm speculating a bit, but it almost seems to me like Donald Trump, and maybe it's a mix of the fact that the Trump people, well, like me and you, but anybody else who like voted for him, but is really opposed to starting other stupid wars, maybe he's already gotten so much heat from them. Like, he's kind of already lost that part of his base. And then on the power structure side, the warfare state, maybe he's just concluded is impossible to roll back. And so I guess I'll just be Caesar. You know, like, I guess if I can't be America first, I'll be America first by just conquering everybody, and I'll rationalize that we're bringing all of their resources back to us or something. And that's how it is still America first. or he's telling himself, or they're convincing him that he can just do all of this stuff and that it really won't be, it's not a risk, it won't be a big deal or something like that. But it just seems like Donald Trump has like officially decided that that's the direction we're going in.
We're officially in the easy way or hard way stage of threatening everybody, and then I guess we get to find out he walked back tariffs, he's walked back a lot of stuff, so I guess we'll have to see how committed he is to the hard way.
Yeah, no, look, it is always possible that Donald Trump will completely back down from the retarded shit he's saying, do none of it, and then expect credit for backing down. And then his supporters will go, see, there are still, by the way, people who say, in the list of accomplishments for Donald Trump, they put ended the 12-day war. They literally want you to give him credit for that, for ending the war. It's just like, you can't even, like, what can you say to that? You can't make shit like that up. Oh, yeah, I mean, that is true, I guess, technically, but it's really all negated and then some by starting the 12-day war.
There is one more option on the table, which is just LARP with Donald Trump that he actually won and that all the things worked.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's the other way that it could go. Now, to your point, because it is kind of an interesting situation what's going on in Iran right now, the truth is that we don't know a lot about it. We certainly do know there were huge protests. But then today, there were huge pro-regime protests too. So like, it's kind of unclear exactly where the people are. We talked about this on one of last week's shows. And of course, it's unclear, what type of like clandestine backing these groups might have. We don't know that the things have been backed by outside governments, particularly ours and Israel's. But it's very reasonable to suspect that is likely the case. And we know that the goalposts have been moved now to like shooting the protesters. We also know, I mean, look, I think the best source on this is like a Norwegian NGO that said that 192 people have died in the protests. But that's also, it's just, first off, it's not clear that number is accurate. It could be more or less. It's also not clear how those people died, as Donald Trump himself admitted. That it's not, people could have been trampled in some big mob or something like that. Also, we've seen images where like, it's not just protests. I mean, there's fires and violence, and so we just you don't know the nature of what exactly happened there. But we do know that the red line has been moved from Iran can't be allowed to develop a nuke to Iran can't be allowed to enrich 60% uranium to Iran can't be allowed to have intercontinental ballistic missiles. And then as soon as all of those fall apart, it's, they're shooting the protesters. Mind you, not even an accusation that they're about to go genocidal or that they're invading a neighboring country or anything like that. Just if the regime shoots its own people, that's now a justification for war. And one of the things that's interesting here, right, is that my critics love, I mean, their favorite thing to bring up, I think it's that they see it as the chink in my armor or something like that, is that, well, last summer, Dave was real angry, warning that this could become a catastrophe, but it didn't become a catastrophe. Therefore, that's where you're weak, because the lowest IQ, like, playing to group social psychology is to say that. And so people love to like, just say, obviously it's a really dumb argument. Warning something could be a catastrophe doesn't mean it has to turn into one. It doesn't mean you were wrong. But people love to say to me, they go, hey Dave, where's that World War III that you said was going to start? Which is interesting because I never said that. And they can never find a clip of me ever saying this will lead to World War III. I think one time one person produced a clip where I said, in the worst case scenario, you could be looking at a wider war or something like that. But I never predicted it would happen. But let's look at some very real things that a whole lot of prominent war hawks did say. And I find this interesting because now they're openly saying that this is about regime change. The regime's got to go. I mean, obviously, Lindsey Graham's been saying that the whole time, but all of them, Mark Levin, all of them are saying that, like, now we have to support the people. And by the way, Rob, me and you, or people like us, they would call us out as being hypocrites because you saw, you said you cared so much about, Palestinian lives, but now why aren't you standing up for women's rights in Iran? Why aren't you standing with the people of Iran and rooting for this regime to fall? And Donald Trump's already, he's posted out that the people have our support. He's deliberating about what exactly that means. He's talking to the military about options for strikes on Iran. And so, but hold on one second now. Let's just look at this. So last summer, I was saying this is all about regime change in Iran, that Israel wants to overthrow the government there, that this was the 7th country on Wesley Clark's list of 7. They didn't get it done in 5 years, but they're still committed to getting it done, that they've clearly moved in to topple all of the governments, but short of Sudan, which fell apart on its own. But 6 out of the 7 that they planned on doing in 2001, I was saying that this is all part of the clean break. This is all about regime change. And they all swore up and down that it was about the nuclear threat. And Dave's crazy. This has nothing to do with regime change. As Ben Shapiro said, we were crazy to think Donald Trump would ever be getting us in a regime change war. That's not what he does. We were just a bunch of hysterics. And yet then, Rob, they turned around and bragged that the operation was a success. This was the whole thing they were throwing back in our face. Look, we destroyed their nuclear program. Okay, great. So if it wasn't about regime change and it was just about nuclear weapons and we destroyed their nuclear program, sounds to me, Rob, like the job's finished. And yet now, just 6 months later, here we are talking about toppling the regime. So, like, could these people just be honest and admit that actually, just like everything else, Rob, just like COVID and Russiagate and Ukraine and Gaza and wokeism and every damn other thing, yeah, we were right about that one too. This was all about regime change. And this seems to be the second iteration of it. Now, that doesn't mean I think the regime's going to fall. I'm not sure about that at all. But that certainly is the Israeli and the U.S., but I repeat myself, interest here is to topple this government. And I'll just say this on the other part of it. They go, it is, dude, it is unbelievable. Like, I had a post on Twitter about this, but it is unbelievable how the war hawks, right? The same war hawks who, you know, Ben Shapiro says we cured Iraq War syndrome, because he doesn't view the war in Iraq as a disease. He views people not wanting to fight more wars in Iraq as a disease. Now, all these hawks who celebrated the war in Afghanistan and the war in Iraq, you never see a single one of them, at least the one, well, they stopped becoming hawks, but you never see any of the hawks go like, man, I really do feel awful about the 1 million people that got killed there. I really do feel awful about the hundreds of thousands of people that got killed in Afghanistan, and the hundreds of thousands of people that got killed in Libya and Syria and Yemen and Somalia and Pakistan and all these places. They're never, you know, through the whole last 2 years, we've watched these guys justify a fucking genocide and just not have any feeling about it at all. But all of a sudden, Rob, they're humanitarians. All of a sudden, what we're really worried about is the people in the Middle East and the amount of liberty they have and women's rights. I'm supposed to believe all of a sudden that's what you're motivated by, but only when it's in service of a justification for a pretext for another regime change war? I just think about this. How goddamn crazy it is that they want to sit there and try to convince you that no, now it's because we really care about the people. We're just really concerned. We have to overthrow the regime if they shoot their own protesters. After we're sending tens of billions of dollars to Netanyahu's regime. Because what? We care so much about Persian blood, just not Arab blood? Like, does anybody believe this? Like, how fucking stupid or brainwashed do you have to believe that John McCain becomes a humanitarian? I understand he's dead, but they're all John McCain. So, like, John McCain becomes a bleeding heart hippie, but only when, but think about this, Rob. We can prop up Israel as they slaughter like 100,000 innocent people. But we become humanitarians. But coincidentally, we become humanitarians when it's, Israel's biggest regional rival. That's when we start to really care about the people and the rights. And hey, are the women allowed to wear miniskirts? That's what really motivates my U.S. foreign policy. Spreading liberalism around the world. It's just, I don't know, dude, it's too fucking crazy. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Rouget. If you've ever found yourself in that awkward...
Klapphans. Kleiner Panz, bekannt. Zombie.
Also click the link in the video description to claim this offer. All right, let's get back on the show.
I guess, well, in my eye, the Donald Trump regime needs a better propaganda writer, because this is as bad as we're going to war with Venezuela over the fentanyl coming into the country. But I guess it's just in line with the way that Donald Trump does things, where he's like, don't worry, a month from now, we don't have any accountability for what we said a month ago. Yep. So a month ago it was, 6 months ago it was over nuclear warheads. Now it's over, they're killing their civilians. Venezuela, it just shifted to now it's about their oil. And so I guess it's just kind of in lockstep with Donald Trump, where you can say something now and no one cares if in 3 months from now you just say something else.
Dude, did you see, I can't remember whether it was just on your point. It was either to the New York Times or it was one of his press conference interviews. But where Donald Trump got asked about how it's really our oil. And he just abandoned it too. He went, well, I mean, like, the oil companies did have legal claims and some of them were settled in court, and it's all a tax write-off anyway if you lose me investing foreign. So like he just took his own pretense away right there. Like, he didn't even care. It's like the gang that didn't exist that they just decided to abandon. Like, yeah, it's like they have no sense of even thinking that maybe they would be held accountable for what they were saying last week, next week. Like, that's just not even a thought that could maybe happen. It really is unbelievable to watch. But of course, with all of these guys, you know, it's like when Donald Trump first captured Maduro, and you heard a bunch of people saying, you know, well, a regime change in South America is totally different than regime change in the Middle East. You know, it's different religion, different culture, different all this. So like, you can't let, and then it's like, oh, you guys want to do regime change in Iran? Now can I look at the region? And you're like, no. I mean, that's still totally different. It doesn't matter. Like, we did this in their two neighboring countries, like the two countries that touch Iran. We invaded and overthrew the governments. They were both catastrophes. We overthrew the government in Syria. That seems to be a pretty big catastrophe right now. Not quite what the others turned into. Libya, goddamn catastrophe. So like, what? We're supposed to believe that, I don't know, that this time it's just going to work out really well. It's really amazing to watch. And again, you know, just saying, for through the whole summer last summer, I was sitting there saying this is all about regime change. That's what this is getting into another regime change operation in the Middle East. They were all saying, no, it's just about the 60% uranium. We're pretty much proven right on that. And then also, for 6 straight months, while all the hawks have tried to use this as an own, like, you were worried about something and it didn't go bad, we kept saying, but this isn't over. We're at halftime of this. Like, clearly, all the principles involved are telling you that this isn't over. It's like, you don't have to look much further than that, but like, the thing is that Donald Trump and Netanyahu and the Ayatollah himself are all saying the same thing. They're saying they're going to rebuild their nukes. They're saying all this stuff. Netanyahu is saying they're still working on all this other technology. We're going to have to go bomb them again. And Donald Trump's saying we're going to have to go bomb them again. So like, how would you ever conclude that the thing is over when all the parties involved are saying explicitly this ain't over? Seems reasonable to me.
Not everyone larps with Donald Trump when he goes, hey, problem solved. And in the case of the nuclear warheads, I don't know. Tell me how they were within breakout period from a bomb that moved all their enriched uranium, were struck, and then that's no longer a problem.
Yeah.
How does that story make sense?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's as simple as Donald Trump will not allow them to go with the pretext for war here is the nuclear threat, because he's already bragged so much about how he destroyed their nuclear program. It's almost like they just took while celebrating, they took their own excuse away from them. I mean, maybe like you said, they don't care about what they say next week from last week. Maybe they'll go back to that. But it seems like they just had to like go to something else because they just spent so much time bragging about how they decimated the Iranian nuclear program. You know, I gotta say, I find this kind of interesting. Because, you know, people say, and to me, it's just like the dumbest argument ever. So I can't believe